Raise your hands if you're still waiting for God to answer a prayer. Raise your hands if you're starting to get really tired. Here's the thing. Between the promise and the breakthrough is the reality of everyday life, and we can't deny the fact that it is not easy and it can get really frustrating. There are days when you're hopeful, there are days when you're discouraged. There are days when you feel like you're seeing progress only to see everything fall apart again. And it hurts. You wonder why God even allowed it to start in the first place if it's gonna break. You start to wonder what in the world is He up to? And you start to wonder if He even thinks that you're important. In times like this, many refer to it as a season of wilderness. And if you're a believer, you're probably gonna go through it. And if you're in the middle of one now, here are a few things you should remember. Your feelings and your beliefs are two separate things. Truth can become very subjective when our feelings are involved, because what we're feeling in the moment is very real, but it doesn't always tell us the truth. For example, disappointment is a real feeling, but does that mean that God has abandoned us? Frustration is a real feeling, but does that mean that God is not at work? Of course not. The reality of our situation is very real, but the ultimate reality is that God is making everything beautiful in His time. You're just in the middle of the process and you're courageous enough to brave the battle. Your feelings should never be ignored. You should understand them, but you should never place them in charge of your decision-making process. In other words, we have to be clear of what we believe and consciously choose to hold on to it rather than our feelings. Feelings come and go, but God's precepts last forever. Number 2. Admit your frustration to God. It is important that we do this because once we don't feel like telling God, we are low-key assuming that He doesn't care that much. And when you start to doubt God's love, that's when you'll be tempted to either take matters into your own hands or to sin. You see, temptation is not the root cause of sin. Unbelief is. So, acknowledge your feelings to God and remember that your feelings are signals and allies to remind you that your inner world needs a realignment of perspective. Especially if you've been a long-time Christian, you might not dare to admit your frustration. But guess what? Your feeling is not a sin, and denying it or keeping it a secret does not make you a saint. It will only harden your heart and build your resentment towards God. You need to remember that you're in a season where God is equipping you, He is purifying you, and He is refining you. He will provide you with all that you need. But just like every good father, He is not going to spoon-feed you because He wants you to realize how strong you can be when you place your trust in Him. And this leads us to the last point. Remember that God does not need your help. We need to know our place and we need to know what to do in the waiting. Is He asking us to pray more, read more, rest more, sleep more? Whichever it is, focus on that, obey that, and leave the rest to God. And if you're finding it hard to give up control, don't ignore that feeling. Sit with that, go back to point number 2, and get honest with God. Here are some practical questions that you can ask the Holy Spirit. Number 1, do I have any wounds that need healing? Number 2, if so, what is the root event or experience that has caused that wound? Number 3, is there anything that God has been asking me to do that I have been ignoring? Ask the Holy Spirit to reveal that to you and ask God to heal you. With that, you'll slowly learn that it is safe to place a trust in God, which will allow you to give Him more control of your life. We need to learn that life will be a series of problems, promise, prayers, and breakthroughs on new levels again and again, and life will be fulfilling when we learn to embrace the joy and tension that each day offers. Contentment does not begin when the breakthrough comes. It is knowing that we are blessed now. It is knowing that God is making everything beautiful now. So this is how you fight your battles. You give thanks, you show up, you do everything unto the Lord, and you allow the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, to guard your heart as you go to bed. God is the author and the finisher of our faith, and He loves you more than anyone ever will. So rest assured that He will not break His promises, and you will be okay.